Welcome back. This is the third and the last part of my story, Life as I Saw It. Here, I shall tell about my entry to the IAS, my continuance in that service, the values I held high in service and my personal life, my views on contemporary society, and the history of the acquisition of a foothold to live in Kolkata. I shall start with the history of my entry to the IAS and go through the narrative of the few years of my service in that cadre, ending with my retirement from service. Other matters will follow. First time promotion to IAS, reasons for non-acceptance and cancellation. As I have said elsewhere, during my tenure as the Deputy Secretary in the Health and Family Welfare Department, I got my order of promotion to the IAS for the first time in 1992 after more than 24 years of service in the WBCS, executive. I was posted as the additional executive officer of Nadia Zilla Parishad, with the headquarters at Krishnanagar. I had then 2 school-going daughters. My wife was not familiar with Calcutta's life and was not capable of handling day-to-day problems and emergencies. I had no relations of mine anywhere near Calcutta. I couldn't leave Calcutta leaving the family, nor could I take them to my workplace, as my children were going to school. Besides, I was staying in a government quarters in Calcutta. There was an acute shortage of the government accommodation in Calcutta at that time. Once I vacated the quarters, which I had obtained at great difficulty with the help of one of my senior colleagues, it would be a yeoman's task to get one on return to Calcutta. I, therefore, represented my problems to the government in the Home, Personnel and Administrative Reforms Department. I had met the secretary of that department and requested her to post me in a district nearer to Calcutta so that I could commute from home, or else I would have to forego the promotion. My representation went unheeded. Eventually, I had to forego promotion, much against the will of my wife. Government promptly accepted my letter of foregoing the promotion and cancelled the appointment order. I regretfully note that some officers in the same select list managed postings of choice, manipulating political connections. Even later, when further appointments were made out of the same 1992 select list in the vacancies caused due to withdrawal from the districts of officers previously posted there, my case was not considered, though I had drawn the attention of the Secretary, Home, Personnel and Administrative Reforms Department to the matter. Officers junior to me both in the WBCS, Executive, and 1992 Select List for promotion to the IAS were given the benefit of posting in adjoining districts disregarding me. It was discrimination per se and violated the principle of natural justice. In West Bengal, the turn for promotion to the IAS comes to the state civil service officers after they had served for 24 to 25 years in the West Bengal civil service. By the time these officers become eligible for promotion, they get settled in Calcutta with school or college-going children. Most of them try to get posted near Calcutta to be able to commute to their place of work without disturbing the family setup. In the absence of any well-defined policy of posting for these officers, it becomes easier for those of them who had political contact or contact at places that mattered to manipulate a posting of their choice. In the absence of any connection, political or otherwise, I could not find a posting in a district nearby Calcutta, to which I could commute from home. I, however, kept on my fight for justice, though I had ultimately failed. Request for the revival of appointment and later events. On February 10, 1993, I represented to the government of West Bengal against the discrimination meted out to me in my posting and appointment and demanded revival of my case as was done in similar other cases. In reply to my said representation, I was informed on March 1, 1993, that the government had reconsidered the matter and decided to give me an opportunity of appointment in the IAS from the 1992 select list subject to certain clear stipulations and my furnishing of an undertaking agreeing to those stipulations. I immediately and within the stipulated period furnished the required undertaking. When there was no further development in the matter, after taking the undertaking with promptness, I submitted a representation to the Government of India through Secretary Home, PAR, Department, Government of West Bengal on April 26, 1993, explaining the situation and requesting them for early issuance of appointment order. In reply to this letter, the Home, PAR, Department of the Government of West Bengal informed me on May 21, 1993, that the Government of India had declined to accept the proposal of the state government to appoint me from the SCS 1991 select list. Upon receipt of this letter, I wrote back to the Secretary Home, PAR, Department, pointing out that in the offer of Home, PAR, Department dated March 1, 1993, there was nothing to suggest that it was subject to clearance from the Government of India. On the contrary, the language of the letter, and the promptness with which the undertaking was sought, gave a distinct idea that it was a finally decided case and pending only for my acceptance of the terms. Besides, the appointment was to be from the 1992 select list and not the 1991 select list as mentioned in the letter. The state government did not also intimate me the position as now stated by them in time so that I could seek redress before the appropriate authority. They informed me only after it became a closed case. Even my representation to the Government of India was not forwarded. From the ground for rejection of the proposal by Government of India, as reproduced in the letter of the Home, PAR, Department of the State Government, it appeared that the proposal had fallen through due to a delay in reaching it to the appropriate authority. The matter was dealt with lackadaisically both at the level of the state and the central government. Next time, in 1993, while submitting my option for being considered for appointment to the IAS, I highlighted the whole episode of 1992, pointing out the injustice meted out to me vis-a-vis others of similar standing and asked for a posting in a nearby district if selected. I was selected but was posted again to the distant district of Burdwan, to which place I could not commute from home at Calcutta. My earlier problem still persisted, and I could not move out of Calcutta, leaving behind the family. I was disgusted by the state government's way of treating me. I did not join and kept the matter hanging for quite a good length of time. My posting order was issued in December 1993, but I did not join for the whole of 1994 and the better part of 1995. Meanwhile, I don't remember when, Secretary, Home, PAR, Department Mr. K. M. Mundal called me and wanted to know why I was not joining my promotion post. I told him my problems. He said he was aware of the developments as recorded in my personal file and could cancel the order if I did not join. I told him it was his prerogative, I had my problems. I don't know what happened after that. I did not receive any order of cancellation of my 1993 appointment to IAS. A year later, I received an order issued on September 11, 1995, appointing me as the additional district magistrate and additional collector, Howrah, in the cadre of IAS. Joining the IAS, I joined the substantive post of District Land and Land Reforms Officer and Additional District Magistrate and Additional Collector in the cadre of the IAS on Sept 16, 1995. I could now commute to my workplace from home. My appointment as District Land and Land Reforms Officer was ratified by the L&LR Department by its order of appointment issued on Sept 28, 1995. I was treated as an entrant of 1995, the year of allotment in the IAS being 1988. I had lost seniority of 4 years, considered against the first order of promotion, in 1992. I became junior to many of my juniors both in the WBCS, Executive, and the IAS Select list of 1992. This was all due to the absence of any clear policy of the state government for deciding places of posting for officers on promotion to the IAS. Ingenuity in district posting. Of WBCS, Executive, officers on promotion to IAS. The necessity of having district experience does not apply to WBCS, Executive, officers who get promotions after decades of working in the district, though such necessity may be there for officers from other lateral state services. The ground of district experience put forward for posting WBCS, Executive, officers outside the state headquarters does not, therefore, hold water in the case of those officers. Such officers can very well be promoted in situ. This erroneous policy of district posting of WBCS, X, officers on promotion to the IAS should have been dispensed with years back. But who cares? My conclusion. This is perhaps the penalty I had to pay due to my non-compromising attitude in the matter of implementation of rules and regulations and for not building up political connections or connections at higher ends. That such was the case with me would also be borne out by the facts in the history of my acquisition of a flat in Salt Lake. I have no regret in either case. It is a fact of life, that one has to undergo suffering if one wants to stick to one's principles. Finally, I may add that in the context of being not able to compete for direct entry to the IAS decades back due to the age bar, this loss of seniority for a few years was of little significance to me. I am happy I could work to my satisfaction. I have brought these matters here only to highlight how one could be penalized for not towing the lines in the government. My 15th posting, Additional District Magistrate Andhilro, Howrah. Assumption of office, background and working environment. I joined as the Additional District Magistrate and District Land and Land Reforms Officer, Howrah, in the cadre of the IAS on October 16, 1995, without change of residence. I was new to the land reform setup. I did not also have the training in settlement. The settlement setup had been integrated with the land reform setup after I had left the district administration in 1980. As the District Land and Land Reforms Officer, I was in independent charge of the District Land and Land Reforms Administration. All matters pertaining to land and land revenue, excluding land acquisition, were dealt with in LR offices. LR officers had to deal with the public in land matters regularly. There was ample scope for corruption. Many of these officers did not also have a good service reputation. I, therefore, had to be vigilant to keep them in control. An instance of corruption beyond my knowledge. Despite my vigilance, there was an instance where a few corrupt officers, including one of the district office, formed a coterie and acted contrary to the public interest for personal gains. I was kept totally in the dark till it was made a fait accompli. Later, some officers, including a couple of them in the state secretariat, tried to protect this coterie of officers, either not understanding the full import of the happenings or out of malice. They tried to shift the responsibility to the District Land and Land Reforms Officer. But that attempt was foiled when I divulged all the background materials and demanded an independent inquiry by an authority not connected with the matter at any stage. Copies of some of the documents pertaining to the matter have been placed under the caption, History of Howrah Divesting Matters, towards the end of the appendix page of my website. I am not aware of the action taken till I retired. Administrative setup. I had one deputy DLRO of the WBCS cadre to assist me in the district office and several revenue officers for looking after the day-to-day work. I had some excellent revenue officers in the district office. There were 2 LR subdivisions coterminous with administrative subdivisions, each under a subdivisional land and land reforms officer. Each STLRO had under him several BLLROs in charge of respective block land and land reforms office. BLLROs had some revenue officers to assist them. Field visits, monitoring and coordination. To tighten the LR administration, I started visiting, unannounced, offices down to the level of revenue officers. Initially, I had found these field-level revenue officers and some of the BLLROs absent at their places in the course of my surprise visits. After I had made a few such visits, news spread around, and matters improved substantially. I had received feedback and had also found on later visits that the officers had changed habits and were attending offices as usual. I also started formal inspection of offices with prior programs. This helped in proper updating of records, plugging of procedural loopholes, and disposal of cases. It also helped me to understand the functioning of L and LR offices and the grassroots level activities. I used to hold meetings with the SDLLROs and the BLLROs every month at the district office. Item-wise monthly targets of work for every BLRO and each STLRO were fixed in these meetings. Performance against the targets of a month was monitored in the next monthly meeting, and the reasons for the shortfalls, wherever these occurred, were analyzed. Concerned officers had to explain the shortfalls in these meetings. Corrective actions, wherever necessary, were then taken. Matters referred to by the subdivisional and the block officers, and pending at the district office, were also noted for quick disposal. Officers, looking after the concerned matters in the district office, had to explain reasons for pendency in the meeting and advise field-level officers suitably for rectification of errors, or deficiencies, if any. These meetings also served as a two-way avenue for the exchange of views and information. At times, I visited concerned SDOs and BDOs for effective coordination in LR matters. I also visited the camp offices for the field survey in connection with cushion preparation. I toured extensively to keep abreast of the field situation and to keep officers alert. Officers were always encouraged to bring their problems to me whenever they felt it necessary. Thus, by monitoring the performance and intervening where necessary, I could achieve adequate progress in work. This also helped me to keep the LR setup in Howrah more or less under control. I don't say that I had removed all the deficiencies and made it perfect, but can reasonably claim that I could make a substantial improvement in the functioning of the LR setup in Howrah. Handling political pressure. The District Land and Land Reforms Officer was also the authority to allow the conversion of the character of the land. There used to be political pressure in some cases for allowing conversion of the character of the land. I withstood these pressures my way and decided on matters as per the rules and the field situation. This brings to my mind a particular instance where I had to deal with a minister. Once, a minister, now deceased, under whom I had previously worked in a different department, had telephoned me to ask for the conversion of a piece of land in a case that was under my consideration. I explained to the minister the reasons for which it could not be done. When he continued trying to convince me and failed to see the reasons, I told him to send the petitioner to me. When the petitioner came to me, I told him that given the facts and circumstances, his application for conversion could not be allowed. This decision would not change wherever he might like to go and whomsoever he might approach. The matter never came back to me so long as I was in Howrah. Other work. I had some other administrative work as the additional district magistrate. Also, as the DLRO, I was the appellate authority in certain types of cases involving land. I kept aside time for hearing these cases. Relation with district magistrates. I had a perfect working relationship with my district magistrates. During my stay in Howrah, I also actively participated in the conduct of the assembly and the parliamentary elections and assisted the district magistrates in some aspects of the conduct of the elections. At my time, district magistrates at Howrah were first Ravikant and then Alapan Bandyopadhyay, later, Chief Secretary to the Government of West Bengal. They did know about me and my way of functioning and hardly intervened in my work. IAS Induction Training Course. In 1997, when at Howrah, I went for an induction training course for IAS officers at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie. The course was conducted from September 15 to October 17, 1997. I had reached Mussoorie on the morning of September 14 and was accommodated in the Institute's hostel at Indira Bhawan in a double-seated room with colleague Susan Tassen. Training classes started the next day and continued up to the 25th in the first phase. Besides the faculty members of the academy, we did have senior bureaucrats of standing from other states and the central government, as also a few selected political leaders amongst our guest lecturers. Sri Prafulla Mahanta, the then Chief Minister of Assam, had visited the institute and had a chit-chat with us, the trainee officers. On the first Saturday after the commencement of the training, the institute arranged a visit for us to nearby Kempty waterfalls, and on the following Sunday to Hardwar and Rishikesh. At Hardwar, we had a ropeway ride to visit Manasa Temple on a hilltop. We offered puja in the temple. When I was coming back with others carrying the packet of prasada in my hand, a monkey snatched away the packet, even before I could realize it. We had our lunch in the tourist lodge at Hardwar. Post-lunch, we visited Rishikesh and returned to the institute at around 8 p.m. During my stay in Mussoorie, I had once a ropeway ride to Mussoorie Peak. The peak presented an exquisite view of Mussoorie and the surrounding hills. Kempty was about 18 kilometers from the institute. We were taken there by the bus of the institute. In the Kempty waterfalls, we had an astounding view of a huge mass of water falling down the hills with milky froth. We went down a large number of stairs to the pool where the water was falling and moving out in a channel. Bharat Darshan Program Phase I. From the 26th of September 1997, we had a break for visiting places under the Bharat Darshan program, which formed an integral part of the training course. Through the Bharat Darshan programs, it was sought to make the trainees acquainted with the history, people, culture, and developmental status of different parts of the country. For convenience, the trainees were divided into groups and allotted regions as per the group's choice. We had selected South India. We had, in our group, all the 3 participants from West Bengal and those from Rajasthan, Gujarat, and some other states. In the first phase of our Bharat Darshan programs, we started on the morning of the 26th of September and reached Delhi at around 10:30 a.m. We met the Cabinet Secretary, in the absence of the Prime Minister, according to a pre-arranged program, and had tea and snacks with him. We stayed for the night in Delhi at the respective state bhawans before starting for Bharat Darshan. The next morning, I and others of the group, took off for Bangalore at 9 a.m. We reached Bangalore at around 11 a.m. After lunch and a rest at the Kumar Krupa guest house, where our accommodation was arranged, we left for Tirupati Tirumalai, reached there late in the evening, and halted for the night. We visited the Tirupati temple early the next morning. As the IAS trainees, we were given exclusive entry to the temple of Venkateshvara. Later, we left for Bangalore, reaching late in the afternoon. We had enjoyed a good lunch in a wayside restaurant, dhaba, on our way back. This trip was by our arrangement. One of our co-trainees from Tamil Nadu, who had someone known in the temple administration of Tirupati, had arranged the visit and the stay. We halted at Bangalore on the 28th and the 29th of September. There we met the Divisional Commissioner on the 28th and had a discussion with her on the Karnataka administration. We also visited the State Secretariat in the Legislative Assembly building. In the evening, we attended a Kannada musical program in Bangalore. On the 29th, we visited the Titan factory in the industrial town of Hosur, about 40 km off from Bangalore in the state of Tamil Nadu. There, we were taken around different departments of the factory. We saw the components of watches, gold ornaments, and other products being manufactured and assembled. In the assembly department, we saw only women workers working in a serene atmosphere. The workplace was air-conditioned, and there was pin-drop silence there. The factory campus and workplaces were kept markedly clean and tidy. After the visit, we had our lunch in the factory hosted by the company. In the evening, we visited the city office of the company in Bangalore. On the 30th we moved to Mysore city and visited the historical places in and around the city and Srirangapatnam. The next morning, the 1st of October, we left for Bandipora Forest Reserve on the way to Owadhi. We reached Bandipora at around 11:30 a.m. and moved into the forest department cottages allotted to us. There, I got stung by bees that flocked to me as I opened a window of our allotted cottage. The window had not been opened for years. As I had opened it and disturbed the bees' peaceful habitat, the bees got bewildered and stung me. This had happened as we were settling down on arrival at the forest guest house. Later, we shifted to a different cottage. Each cottage had 2 beds. I and my colleague Susan Tassen were allotted one such cottage. That afternoon, after lunch and rest, we went on a safari deep inside Bandipora forest. The safari was arranged by the Forest Department of Karnataka government by their bus. We saw deer, wild dogs, wild buffaloes, and some stray animals in the wild of Bandipora, but no elephant, or tiger, or bison. That night we halted at Bandipora in our allotted cottages. As the night fell, deer in herds came over to the open space around the cottages. In the darkness, we could see pairs of eyes shining here and there in the vacant spaces within the complex. Bandipora forest was the hideout of the infamous sandalwood dacoit Veer Uppan at that time. It was from here that Veer Uppan kidnapped a few officials of the Karnataka government a few days after our visit. I had read this later, in the newspaper. Anyway, the next morning, the 2nd of October, we left for Owadhi. On the way, we had a conducted tour in Madhumala forest in Tamil Nadu. Bandipur and Madhumala were annexed reserved forests. Bandipur was in Karnataka, while Madhumala was in Tamil Nadu. We saw here herds of deer and wild elephants besides peacocks and other small animals. The scenic beauty of the Madhumala forest was more charming than that of Bandipura. We went up to a watchtower inside the forest from where we could enjoy the panoramic view around. There were hills close by with thin streams flowing down them at places. After visiting Madhumala, we resumed our journey to Owadhi. We reached Owadhi at noon. We stayed there for that night and the next morning at the government guest house. We visited important tourist places in and around Owadhi. The guest house in Owadhi had 2 wings. One wing comprised of a new modern building and the other, where we were accommodated, of a grand old building. The rooms in the old building were very large with unusually high ceilings. These could cause fear in anyone living alone at night there. We found, to our surprise, that the 2 wings were connected by an underground tunnel of yesteryears. On the 3rd afternoon, we left for Coimbatore by road through the Western Ghats. We enjoyed the exquisite scenic beauty along the route. We reached Coimbatore in the evening and halted for the night in the circuit house there. Had a good dinner at a local restaurant. We had found the people of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu entertaining and hospitable. Places were well connected by well-maintained roads in sad contrast to those of our state. The vehicles here could safely move at a speed of 100/120 km per hour. The next morning, we flew to Mumbai on the way to Delhi. As our Delhi flight was later in the evening, we had spare time. We roamed around Mumbai for some time after keeping our luggage in the airport cloakroom. The cloakroom was in a separate building, way off from the airport. This had been the only occasion I had used an airport cloakroom to keep the luggage in transit. We visited the Gateway of India, Nariman Point, Kamala Nehru Gardens, and Mahalakshmi Mandir. This was my second visit to Mumbai. The first was years before when I had been working in the cooperative spinning mills of Midnapuri and Bankura. We left for Delhi by the 6:30 p.m. flight, reached there at 9 p.m., and halted in Bangabhawan. The morning after, we left for Dehradun on the way to Mussoorie by Shatabdi Express. Reached Mussoorie in the evening. Training resumed. After our return from South India, we had our training classes from October 6 to October 10. Bharat Darshan program phase 2. We then had a short second phase of Bharat Darshan. The group composition was different this time though. We 3 from West Bengal were in the same group. We left for Chandigarh on the 10th afternoon, after the break of the class. We were traveling in several cars on a hilly track. Just after crossing the Uttaranchal border on our way, we visited Banta Sahib Gurudwara. This Gurdwara was built in memory of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, the 10th Guru of Sikhs. The Gurdwara is of historical and religious importance to the Sikhs world over. The Gurudwara has a palanquin paki made of pure gold, donated by devotees. Chandigarh was quite far by the route we had taken. It took us long to go the distance. We reached Chandigarh at around midnight. This tour was not a pre-arranged tour like the one in the first phase. We had to find our accommodation by ourselves. At great pain, we could find accommodation in a hotel in Chandigarh. We 3 from West Bengal shared a double-bedded room with an extra cot provided. The food served was stale, and we had to forego food that night. Chandigarh is bordered by the state of Punjab to the north, the west, and the south, and by the state of Haryana to the east. The city has one of the highest per capita incomes in the country. It was reported to be one of the cleanest cities in India based on a national government study. The Union Territory also headed the list of Indian states and territories according to Human Development Index. In 2015, a survey by LG Electronics ranked it as the happiest city in India on the Happiness Index. The metropolitan area of Chandigarh, Mohali, Panchkula collectively forms a tri-city, with a combined population of over 1,611,770. The city of Chandigarh was, by itself, a beauty to see. It was a well-planned city and divided into a number of sectors with easy inter- and intra-sector accessibility. The roads were wide and flanks, neat and clean. There were big island parks at the road junctions ornamented with beautiful flowers and plants. The master plan of the city was prepared by Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier. It had transformed earlier plans created by the Polish architect Maciej Nowicki and the American planner Albert Meyer. We visited the Nekchand Rock Garden and the Magnus Lake in Chandigarh the next morning and left for Simla after lunch. We reached Simla late at night and somehow managed to get accommodation in the State Administrative Training Institute's hostel. The next morning, we visited Kufri, some distance away from Simla, where we saw the zoo in its natural surroundings. We could not see the whole of the zoo for want of time. For the first time, I saw an eagle and a wolf in captivity here. Later, we visited Mel and some other places in Simla. Simla had the unique feature of having a tunnel at its entrance. It also had many historical events associated with it. It was here that the agreement between Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and Pakistani President Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was signed on July 2, 1972. This agreement was more than a peace treaty seeking to reverse the consequences of the 1971 war, i.e., to bring about withdrawals of troops and exchange of POWs. It was a comprehensive blueprint for good neighborly relations between India and Pakistan. Simla is also the summer resort of the President of India. In the afternoon of October 12, 1997, we left Simla for Mussoorie. We rejoined our co-trainees at Mussoorie on the 12th night to continue our training classes till the end of the course. A complete photo show video of the places we visited during Bharat Darshan may be seen at https://udo.be/lih6uri-pfa. Initiation into computer. During this induction training course, we were also introduced to computers. I got immensely interested in it. I made it a habit to practice on the computer regularly in the computer room attached to our hostel at Indira Bhawan. Initially, I had faced difficulties in handling a computer, being new to it. With my determination and urge to learn, I got over those difficulties and acquired good working knowledge. Back in my place, I developed this knowledge through my efforts and initiative and became well versed in computer operation and internet use. I made it, computer, a part of my life and kept on experimenting with it. Today, with my developed knowledge, I can claim to be an advanced user of the computer. To achieve this, I installed a computer at home to work at leisure. I also had computers to use at the offices where I had worked. My knowledge of the computer has been helping me to a great extent since I retired. My training in Mussoorie had offered me the opportunity to learn how to use computers, and because of this, I could later become computer savvy. Apart from this introductory training at Mussoorie, I did not have any other institutional training on the computer. Training ends, return to the place of work. We had our classes up to the 16th at noon. Before the training ended, we were offered some books on administration and related matters, to choose from a collection displayed at the institute for taking with us. A group photo of participants and faculty members was taken at the end of the course. We left Mussoorie for our respective states on the 17th of October 1997. We had nicely enjoyed our stay at Mussoorie. Transfer from Howrah. After my return from Mussoorie training, I worked in Howrah up to June 14, 1998. I left Howrah on June 15, 1998, on being appointed the Joint Commissioner, Reservation, and ex officio Joint Secretary to the Government of West Bengal in the Department of Backward Classes Welfare. My last posting, Joint Secretary Backward Classes Welfare Department. Joining and retirement. I joined the Backward Classes Welfare Department at Writers Buildings, Kolkata, on June 16, 1998, as the Joint Commissioner Reservation and ex officio Joint Secretary. I retired from here on February 28, 2003. My job allocation. I used to look after reservations in education and employment for the scheduled castes, the schedules tribes and the other backward classes, and matters concerning the related institutions and the commissions. Procedure for enforcement of reservation in West Bengal. In West Bengal, reservation in employment was vacancy-based and not post-based, as was in many other states and the central government. To enforce the vacancy-based reservation, a 100-point roster was designed, in which points of reservation were identified and earmarked for the reserved categories according to the declared percentage of reservation. Every state government office and institution had to maintain a 100-point roster separately for each category of vacancies. The nature one of the vacancy, when it occurred, was determined with reference to this roster. The reservation to run public services. In case of non-availability of a suitable candidate for a reserved vacancy, the appointing authorities could approach the Joint Commissioner with a proposal for dereservation if they considered such appointment was of immediate necessity in the interest of public service. While dealing with these cases, I noticed a large dearth of eligible candidates from the reserved categories, particularly of technical posts and posts of college and school teachers. The stalemate in public works and education was avoided by temporarily applying the carry-forward principle to reserved vacancies. Carry-forward principle and its effect. Under the carry-forward principle, the related reserved vacancy was reserved to fill up the post by available general category candidates to meet immediate needs. Reservation against that reserved vacancy was carried forward to the next unreserved vacancy. The next open vacancy thus became a reserved one. By this process, we soon arrived at a situation where all the subsequent vacancies up to a certain point became reserved for certain categories of superior posts. For such categories of posts, there remained no scope for the appointment of general candidates for some time in the future if a sufficient number of eligible reserved category candidates were available for that length of time. That was unavoidable. It was, however, not desirable that such a situation should continue for long. But, there was no option if public services were to be rendered. Lessons learned from dereservation and carry-forward principle. The main lesson one gained from this situation was there should be stress on the education and training of the reserved category candidates rather than a public outcry for the enhancement of the quota. If the available reserved quota could be filled by those for whom these were meant, that by itself would be a great service to those in need. While hundreds of vacancies for people from the reserved category remained unutilized for want of suitable candidates, what purpose it was supposed to serve by enhancing the quota on paper? But the politicians of the day have their calculations, and they act with an eye to the vote bank. Within my limited scope, I tried to rigorously enforce the 100-point roster for filling up vacancies on direct recruitment during my tenure. My objective was to see at least those who had the eligibility were not deprived of their legitimate due. Publishing Compendium of Acts, Rules and Regulations. In 2002, while in the Department of Backward Classes Welfare, I prepared a compendium on reservation single-handed, using the office computer and, at times, the service of my personal assistant. It was a 455-page document on A4 size paper containing all the acts, rules, circulars, and the orders of the state government and the Government of India on the reservation and other related matters concerning the scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes, and the other backward classes. I got it printed and circulated a good number of copies to the institutions and the individuals concerned. I had to work late after office hours to complete this document. The idea of preparing it had struck me when I found there was no consolidated document of acts, rules, orders, and circulars for reference when needed, one had to look all around for the materials in processing a case. Besides, I had felt it would also be helpful to those for whom these were meant. My PA, Tapas Giri, helped me a lot in maintaining my schedule of work while I worked in this department. I had found Tapas an earnest, dutiful, punctual, and hard-working young man, at the prime of his career. This document, compendium, was published in 2002, and it was likely that some modifications in matters contained in it might have been carried out in the meanwhile. Anybody wanting to use any material from it would, therefore, be well advised to consult the latest versions in the related matter. My functioning and my superiors. It was the last phase of my service career. During my stay in this department, I had tried to enforce acts, rules, and regulations in letters and spirits in the same way I had tried elsewhere. I must admit that I got the full support of the minister in charge and the departmental secretary in this regard. I had worked under 2 ministers and 3 secretaries while in the department. First, it was Dinesh Dakwa as minister in charge and Mrs. Krishna Jala as secretary. Later, I had Upen Kisku as the minister in charge, with Sukhbilash Barma and Ramsevak Bandyopadhyay respectively as the departmental secretary. Retirement and related event. After serving in the government for 35 years 2 months and 25 days, I retired in the afternoon of February 28, 2003, and bade goodbye to writers' buildings and to the civil service. I would like to add an interesting issue here. On the eve of my retirement, my secretary, much against my will, had tried his best to get me re-employed in the department for some time. As expected, he had failed. I knew it, and I had told him so when he had moved the proposal despite my objections. I had by then known the politicians in and out and their way of functioning. As for myself, I was never interested in re-employment in the government, and most certainly, would not have accepted it, even if my secretary had succeeded. My service review. I enjoyed my tenure in the civil service despite having faced professional hazards at times. I am happy for whatever little I could do for the people. Possibly, I could have been of greater service as a civil servant if I were born in the IAS. It reminds me to recall the words "Government work is God's work" inscribed on the top of the Karnataka Legislative Assembly building. I believe there can be no better enunciation of the government work. 4. Service to man is service to God. Public service gives the opportunity to serve people. I, however, feel I could have given more to society had I not got stuck to the civil services. Some of my friends in the service, too, felt that way, and one of them often says jokingly that I would be answerable to the other world for having spoilt my merit in this limited sphere of activity. These are, of course, of no material significance now. My service career was almost equally divided between development and regulatory administration. I, however, found more pleasure in the development work, where one works nearer the masses and can deliver the goods directly to them. In this branch of the administration, one also has the satisfaction of building up new things. Post-retirement employment. Post-retirement, I was appointed as the officer on special duty in Calcutta Stock Exchange, not a government organization, for 1 year at a monthly salary of 40,000 Indian rupees, outside the usual pension. The post carried perquisites of office transport and free telephone, landline/mobile. I had joined the organization on October 28, 2004, and was to continue up to October 27, 2005, unless extended further. But I left the organization after 9 months on August 4, 2005, as I did not like the way of functioning of the chairman, who was also a retired senior IAS officer. Since then, I have kept myself aloof from post-retirement employment. Principles I held high in service. My attitude while in office. During my long service in the government, I have never taken things lying down and have always fought to uphold dignity, justice, and the rule of law. During our training, we learned from our senior colleagues to be fair, just, and lawful in dealing with matters placed before us. Honesty and fervour for justice were ingrained in me. As a civil servant, I had always tried to act as advised and dictated by my conscience and had never allowed any extraneous factor to influence my decision at any stage. All through my service life, I had worked without fear or favor. I had earned the attribute rigid for being firm on the rules and regulations. I did not budge from my rightful stand even when someone in the corridor of powers tried to shake me. I mention here some instances where I did not succumb to the desire of my superiors or agreed to what they said, even knowing that they could damage my career. Instances where I had acted against the wishes of superiors or disagreed with their words or actions. Let me narrate the incidents starting with the last one. I was then the Joint Commissioner and ex officio Joint Secretary for the Reservation of the SC, the ST, and the other backward classes. The Minister of State of the department sent me a proposal to appoint a general category candidate against a reserved vacancy for the scheduled tribes, in his secretariat. He also asked me over the phone to see that the proposal got approval. I told him it might be difficult. As a reserved category candidate was available for that reserved vacancy, it would be illegal to recommend approval of the proposal. I put up the file to the minister in charge of the department through the departmental secretary with a note that the proposal violates the provision of the law and may not be approved. Later, when the minister wanted to know about his proposal, I informed him of the factual position. He was furious and threatened to take action against me. I told him he could get me transferred by exercising his powers. I would prefer to leave the department rather than compromise with law and justice. The file did not come back to me, signifying the rejection of the proposal. There was also no proposal for my removal from the department. To remove any misconception, I may point out that I belong to the general category and have nothing to do personally with the reserved castes or classes. I only tried to enforce the law. It is significant that the concerned minister, himself being of the tribe for which the vacancy was reserved, had favored the appointment of a general category candidate at the cost of a tribal candidate. I remember another incident that occurred during my tenure in this department. There, I had declined to comply with the request of a political heavyweight working in the chief minister's office. The special assistant, a political appointee, to the chief minister had on that occasion asked me to see him with a particular file of our department. I told him point blank that I was not obliged to show him any file. He could send me a requisition through my minister/secretary if he wanted to see any file of this department where I am concerned. I was peeved at his audacity to call me to his chamber with a file he was interested in. I knew that there would be quite a few secretary-level officers at that time who would have responded to his call and rushed to his chamber with the file under the armpit. He wielded such power at that time. In another case, when I was serving in an organization under a different department, the minister in charge of the department, since deceased, had told me certain things, which were not true, and which I had denied. When he insisted that he was right, and his men in the field had reported so to him, I told him, straight to his face, that he should remove me, if he did not have the confidence in me or did not rely on my words. I had added I didn't usually tell a lie and was not in the habit of hanging on to any post. The matter ended there. I gracefully left the organization well after my normal tenure. In the distant past, I refused to join a post, not legally backed, despite the departmental secretary's intervention, insistence, and an oblique reference to his powers to damage my career. Yet earlier, I did not hesitate to put down papers for a central government deputation post with better financial incentives when I had conflicts with the superior acting in contravention of administrative propriety. Even one of the governors, under whom I had served, had once said to his secretary of me, in my presence, "This man will always show you the rules." He was displeased and referring to certain matters, to which I had objected mentioning rules. Due to my inflexible attitude in matters of rules and regulations, I had to face, at times, ugly situations like the ones I have described in the discourse on my tenure in Rajbhawan. As I have narrated there, I had wanted to leave that post before that situation arose, when I had found that the administrative head of the office did not have the grit to take any decision inconvenient to him or to take any matter, however serious, to the governor if he considered it would displease the governor. The additional special pay and the privileges the post had carried could not deter me from initiating action on that line. It is a different matter that it did not ultimately materialize due to some other reason. My service reviews. I never worked for personal gains, nor was I after any so-called high-profile posts in my service career. In retrospect, on some occasions, proposals for my appointment to certain posts were changed at the final stage in favor of some of my colleagues by political manipulation. Even having ranked first in the WBCS executive examination and with no question about my sincerity and efficiency, I had to spend long years in a far-flung place as Meekleganj, where most others feared to tread. But for the personal intervention of Sri B.C. Sharma, the then Joint Secretary, I could have rotted there for many more years. I could not even secure a posting to a station nearby Calcutta on promotion to the IAS on the first 2 occasions and had lost 4 years seniority in consequence when I could finally join the service on my terms. I could not secure a plot of land in Salt Lake even without having any land or house anywhere in India, while some of my colleagues could do that even after possessing flats or houses in Calcutta. But at the end of the day, I feel happy and satisfied that I could function within my defined parameters wherever I had worked. I loved work, and I did it to my satisfaction. I did not have greed for money or position despite my growing up in an environment of wants. As such, I could come out unblemished, even after heading projects worth crores of rupees at different stages of my career, and could deliver justice without being subject to any exterior consideration. Present-day civil servants, versus older days ones, a review. Today, it pains me to see that most of the civil servants are working at political masters' diktat, be it right or wrong. They have, as it were, become his master's/her majesty's voice, always reading masters' minds before giving their views on any matter. They have forgotten the basic principle of the civil service, which requires a civil servant to highlight the provisions of law and give his unbiased views while placing a matter to a political executive. The political master may or may not agree with what is suggested and may pass a different order, which when given in writing becomes binding. It is for a civil servant to highlight the legal position. It is the prerogative of a political master to accede to it or not. If there was any verbal order not supported by law, the rule provides for getting it reduced to writing before acting on it. If these principles were followed, most of the illegalities and irregularities in decision-making could perhaps be avoided. There would be very few political executives who would like to leave a trail behind illegal actions. A civil servant has the authority to refuse to comply with a verbal illegal order. In the past, there were civil servants like K.K. Hajra, Raghu Banerjee, J.C. Sengupta, S.M. Murshid, who could refuse to comply with the orders, not in consonance with the law, straight in the face of their political masters, even of the stature of Dr. B.C. Roy. While it is true that such a breed of civil servants is rare now, it is also a fact that the political masters today are mostly vindictive towards those not conforming to their wishes. A novel way to shunt off officers, not dancing to the tune of masters, to compulsory waiting, not a respectful position, is being taken recourse to as a policy in West Bengal for a decade or so. The backbone of the civil services has been shattered over the years by persistent political interference and the inability of the civil servants to resist that. The self-serving civil servants who now form the majority have taken advantage of the situation to turn things in their favor. On the other hand, the civil servants not guided by self-interest have mostly lacked the courage to act in the way they should have. Only a handful have tried to go against the tide and resist. They have suffered. This is ominous for the future. Unfortunately for the country, civil servants today are, by and large, either malleable or self-serving. It gives us a glimmer of hope when civil servants like Durgas Hakti Nagpal and Ashok Kemka of recent origin, 2015-16, stand up to enforce the law in the face of the stiff opposition of the political hoodlums and their mentors. This shows that civil servants still can stop the rot if they wish. True, the days have changed, and there are nexuses of various kinds acting against the public interest, Yet the civil servants could save the disaster if they wake up as a class. For this, the civil servants need only to be honest, upright, fearless, and law-abiding. They should, as a class, refuse to play at the hands of the politicians and act strictly with honesty, integrity, and according to the code of conduct. Only a shake-up of the system and a change in the attitude of the society could make this happen. Service associations could also possibly play a positive role in motivating their members to act according to law and justice. This could be wishful thinking, but then there is hardly any other alternative. It has recently come in the news that Ashok Khemka has not been empaneled for joint secretary posts in the government of India, though he has attained the seniority for the post. The reason shown is that he has never been on a central deputation in his service career. An instance: self-serving officers' orientation. I am tempted to mention here an instance of a few years back to show how a self-serving officer processed a matter at the West Bengal Secretariat of the L&LR Department. A joint secretary-level officer had written in a departmental note, without an in-depth examination of materials placed before him and without giving his observation point by point on facts stated therein by a district-level officer of that department in a matter involving a court case as, the officer, meaning the district-level officer who had raised the points, has given his opinion as a law officer without trying himself to explore if there is still any scope for getting the appeal admitted. He wrote it against common knowledge that there is no provision for filing an appeal against a court order months after the order is complied with, which the district officer had mentioned in his letter, to which he had made the observation. To him, as his note implies, government officers were not to take the rightful position but need to distort facts to the advantage of those interested. This breed of officers was still there, decades back, only their numbers are on the increase. As is the convention, the said officer was, however, suitably remunerated post and pre-retirement. These are the breed of officers who go beyond rules to please their superiors and make themselves appear efficient. Looking into myself. My attributes. I am a man of strong will and quick action. I consider all the pros and cons of a matter before I take any decision. Once I make a decision, I try to stick to it. I am economical in spending. I believe in the axiom, money saved is money earned. I don't, however, have greed for money. Money is, no doubt, an unavoidable necessity. But excess of it is prone to create troubles. Long back, I had come across a Hindi proverb.
रुपया पैसा आपका माइल है, आते जाते रहते हैं.
Money is nothing but dust on the hand, it keeps on coming and going. I look upon money in that sense. I abhor greed and addiction to the evils of modern life. My motto is, honesty is the best policy. But I believe it is not enough to be honest alone, one has to deliver goods, too. I am a good worker and have a knack for perfection in whatever I do. I detest today's mudslinging, murky, dirty politics but admire the clean politics of yesteryears. I despise wastage in any form and get worked up when this happens. But with regret, I have to admit, I have failed to prevent it in my own house. I love learning new things, and that's one of the reasons I remain occupied with my computer, most of the time, when at home. I am a fully organized person and can't tolerate chaotic formations. I keep all records and documents, duly categorized, in files and folders, be it in the physical space or on the electronic disk. I want things to be kept in their proper places so that these could be easily available when needed. My insistence on this becomes, at times, cause for domestic quarrels. I cannot accept unreasonable and unjust arguments over any matter and get irritated. I find it difficult to compromise on matters of principle. I am highly sensitive, which some consider my weakness. I am simple in living but concentrated on my work, whatever, whenever and wherever it might be. I have never lost sight of my humble beginning and shall carry it to the grave. I have a decent memory. It was because of this that I could bring out the facts of my life from the past, near and distant, to narrate the tale of my life without even having a diary or daily notes. My fault lines. I am an introvert by nature and cannot make friends easily. I am proficient in reasoned writing, but not so much in the conversational field. There, I remain an introvert. I don't feel comfortable in a group or gathering of unknown faces. Outside family and friends, I speak less and listen more. I am not comfortable with staying in others' places, including relations. I get involved in things happening before my eyes or within my knowledge, even at the cost of causing pain to myself. For this, I am not quite liked even within the family and have to face hostile situations at times. I have strong likes and dislikes. I admire the beauty from within to such an extent that, at times, it becomes my weakness. My preferences. I love reading, driving, working on computers, and photography, the last with a special interest in nature photography. Since I became adapted to computers, my reading has been mostly confined to electronic materials. Apart from the books in the physical space, I have 500, as of July 2018, e-books of varied interests on my computer hard disk. I have completed reading most of these books. I also acquired an e-book reader called Kindle Paperwhite in the early part of 2017. Using this device, I can get any number of e-books via the internet from a large online catalog at a nominal monthly subscription. This has been of much use to me, particularly when I travel. I have already read 350 books on this device as of April 2022. Mystery and detective stories including legal thrillers attract me a lot. I feel such stories help in unwinding the mind and analyzing matters from their proper perspective. Social, cultural and religious outlook. I believe in God or Almighty but not in rituals. To me, it is the deeds that count and not the hours spent before an idol. I don't have any superstition, nor do I subscribe to it. I am liberal in my outlook toward different communities. I don't believe in casteism. To me, our traditional values and culture are worth more than the Westernist customs and culture. My failings. I am very choosy by nature and being so made some wrong choices in some serious matters of life which have been the cause of immense pain to me in later days. There, I had taken into consideration all the relevant factors, external and immediate, before I had made the choices. But, as it transpired later, I had failed to appreciate internal and distant factors and their implications. Usually, I consider matters from a long-term perspective. But here, I had failed to do so, possibly, because of some other factors blurring my vision or relevant data or information being not available. I had also ignored the sane advice of some of my well-wishers. At times, I had failed to take the right decision at the right moment. I have succeeded in many spheres but have lacked success in my own backyard. My attraction to beauty and some materialistic joy of life can as well be termed as greed when they become intense. There I lose control and feel helpless. I had been sober, soft-spoken, and reserved since my younger days. I am still so when outside the family. But some of these traits are found lacking when considered within the premises of the family life. There might have been various reasons, not excluding the family environment and my discontent due to belied expectations, for this. Whatever could be the reasons, I feel disturbed by these changes to try but unable to get back to my good old self. The idea about wife and family, mistakes and fallout. In my late teens, I would dream of an intelligent, beautiful, loving, and understanding wife. It had later dawned upon me that I was asking for the moon. All these qualities are impossible to find in any person. Though I adore beauty, beauty is not often accompanied by other qualities. As Leo Tolstoy has said, it is amazing how complete is the delusion that beauty is goodness. In my personal life, the woman I had chosen as my wife was beautiful and had some exceptional qualities, but our views toward life substantially differed. I, however, admit that most modern women would find it hard to fall in line with my way of life. Immune to my own needs, I had always cared for those in the family and around. Even today, I don't care about myself or my health but remain taut with agony for the health and welfare of my near and dear ones. The concept of a family formed in me from childhood was far off the way my family had turned. I had a desire to bring up an ideal family. There I have failed due to opposing forces being stronger. I am a much misunderstood person and often feel alone and abandoned. Romanticism. Here I had been vulnerable, being romantic and emotional. In my early childhood, romantic attachment had grown in me for a classmate of mine, about which I have spoken in detail on the page on academic career. That was a one-sided love. The girl had never known of it, nor did she have the occasion to respond. Later too, some other woman had hit upon me, and I had found the charms and some sort of a divine feeling in it. At different stages of my life, few other women had displayed their interest in me, but I did not feel the urge to reciprocate. To me, love is less physical and more of an intense feeling. I had that rare intense feeling twice, once in childhood and again in adult life. I may say without hesitation that I had experienced an ecstatic joy and fulfillment of true love in its divine reach on those occasions. My irresistible desire for something I had once experienced and enjoyed might have deprived me of other charms of life and caused me pain when facing later events of life. Heterosexual love apart, I feel fulfilled in certain romantic situations. It charms me when, lying alone in a dark room, I listen to Rabindra Sangeet played on a DVD. My finer sentiment gets inspired, and I feel an overwhelming joy within me. A scene of pathos on the celluloid, too, brings tears to my eyes even at this age. Conclusion. Finally, my plus and minus, taken together, maybe I am a little on the plus side. Values then and values now, my surmise. Social condition and moral perception in older days. I was brought up at a time, the 1950s and the 1960s, when our society was largely corruption-free. Poverty was there, all right. But people, by and large, did not have the mindset to earn money or acquire wealth by any means, good or bad. Corrupt people used to be looked down upon in contrast to today's way of weighing people by their monetary value. People generally preferred living within their means rather than becoming rich by having recourse to dishonesty. Moral standards were high. Traditional values of conservative society prevailed. Society was less tolerant of the wrongdoers. New generation steps in, educational environment worsens. Students, by and large, were serious in their studies, and distractions were less. They had respect for the teachers and the elders. Copying in the examination was little known. Those indulging used to be taunted by their classmates when caught. No one could think of threatening or hurting the invigilators when caught copying in the examination hall. The elders could advise the younger ones about right and wrong, and such advice was listened to, by the youngsters in the right spirit, without showing any disrespect. In the school and the college where I had read, there was nothing called students' union as such, and there was no political infiltration in the student community at our places. Our teachers used to look after our needs and welfare. All these are things of the past now. Though there is no student union in the schools today, these students are often found to participate in political programs. Colleges have become the hotbed of politics. Fighting and even murders are taking place amongst the rival groups of the students centering on the election of the college unions. Students now have little respect for their teachers. They often put the teachers in stressful confinement to attain illegal demands. Some of them do not waver even to beat up their teachers mercilessly. We come across such reports in the newspapers, now and then. The environment in the seats of learning has been vitiated. The bond of fellowship amongst the students hardly exists. Without proper education and discipline, how could these students make good citizens and fill the political vacuum in time to lead the nation to glory? They are being taught indiscipline, crimes, and rivalry at the very prime of their life. Our so-called politicians, for their short-term gains, are ruining the future of the nation. In student politics, it is necessary to develop brotherliness, transparency, and value sense. Post-liberalization scenario. Post-liberalization, our society has changed to a great extent. Many of the evils of Western society have crept in, elbowing out our traditional values, while their virtues failed to get inroads. Everyone, barring the exceptions, is now after quick money. Corruption is no longer taboo. Society has become permissive. Free mixing, living together, and earning money by whatever means possible is now the order of the day. Teaching, by and large, has become a means of filling one's pocket through private tuition. There is generally no respect for parents and elders. There are a good many instances of old parents having been thrown out on the streets with no means of subsistence. Several such cases have gone to the court of law in the recent past. Even at home, the old and the infirm are often considered bothersome, and their views are hardly given any credence. The institution of marriage is breaking down, incidents of divorce are rampant. The boys and the girls marrying their so-called girlfriends or boyfriends soon become disenchanted and take recourse to the path of a breakup. This, I feel, is a result of intolerance backed by financial independence coupled with ego clashes. Society has become degraded and politicized. Rape, murder, and domestic crimes are day-to-day happenings. Whenever there is a crime of the higher order, political interference brews up, making it difficult for an unbiased investigation and thereby encouraging the criminals. People now have limitless wants as against the general mental makeup of our times to remain content with whatever little one had. Many of those who do not have the means to satisfy their wants in this age of consumerism take recourse to illegal means to attain them. As a result, criminal activities like corruption, theft, snatching, and even murder have become rampant. Alcoholism and other addictions, propagation and harms. Alcoholism is ruining the younger generation, men and women, alike. In our college days, there was hardly any non-tribal student familiar with drinking, even in a cold place like Shillong. Today, college-going young boys and girls are often seen having hard drinks at bars and restaurants. Amongst those engaged in different professions, the percentage of men and women not addicted to alcohol is on the decline. In the earlier days, women went all out to prevent their alcoholic husbands from drinking. I recount here an incident of my early service life, where a colleague of mine was introduced to alcohol by a group of friends. But he had to give up the drinks within a couple of days of his introduction to it, after receiving a severe tongue lashing from his newly wedded wife. Today, the reverse is often the course, particularly amongst the urban elites. Husbands often encourage their wives to take to drinks, and wives oblige gleefully. In many cases, the drinking of alcohol starts as fun at the beginning and leads to addiction, eventually. Later, it also becomes a cause for family squabbles and domestic violence. I have personal experience of this. Even though I did not have an alcohol culture in our house and never allowed alcohol to enter there, I could not prevent its onslaught once my family extended through the marriage of my daughters. Drinking has become a status symbol for some. Alcohol is invariably served at late-night parties. One could find the husbands and the wives joining the drinking sessions, regularly without having any regard for the evil influence it could have on their young ones. Some irresponsible parents even go to the extent of drinking in front of their baby or child in bars, restaurants, and at home. When the innocent child wants to have it, they stop him by saying that it is a drink for the adults and not for the children. Their craze for the drinks makes them blind, and they cannot see what a dangerous poison they were infusing into the innocent mind by their acts and words, and what a disastrous effect it could have on the child in his later life. One of my friends had once told me of an incident where a young father was having drinks while playing with his young child in the presence of the child's mother. I shudder to think of the impact of this incident on the child's innocent mind. While in the prevailing social setup, it is already difficult to bring up a child properly, how could the parents by their airs and manners worsen it? Here again, I feel it is the fruit of the so-called modern civilization and the permissiveness of present-day society. People like us of the older generation who can read the future feel helpless in the face of the onslaught of this evil of alcoholism all around. Their mental placidness is disturbed, and they remain taut with agony for the future of such strayed individuals close to their hearts. Recently, last week of July 2016, there have been a couple of incidents in Kolkata and a distant district. In the first case in Kolkata, a teenage boy had met his death out of injury at a birthday party of a friend where there was an easy flow of alcohol. In the other case, in a semi-urban area of a district in West Bengal, a girl student of class 9 was rusticated when she was detected to have brought alcohol to her class in the garb of water. A survey conducted amongst the medical students of Kolkata by the All India Institute of Public Health and Hygiene sometimes back, 2018, revealed that 57% of students from the first year to the fourth year are strongly addicted to various kinds of fads. The picture in other institutes of professional studies of engineering, design, and the like, in Kolkata and elsewhere in India, will not perhaps be much different. I have seen some very talented people becoming dumb by addiction to one kind of fad or another. Instead of rising to the higher rung of the social ladder which they deserved, these people had become almost non-entity and were finding it hard even to earn their bread. These examples certainly do not predict a bright future for our society and the country as a whole. Nitish Kumar, Chief Minister of Bihar, has imposed a total prohibition on the sale and consumption of all kinds of liquor in Bihar, the state he administers. But the desired goal can't be achieved until the prohibition is effective all through the country. I bear a strong abhorrence against alcohol. Not that I did not taste it once or twice in the company of my friends, but that did not give me any palatable taste or reasonable cause to stick to it. At the official parties and elsewhere, I had refused the offer of drinks many times. In the early 1990s, when I had been posted in a place of eminence, I had received a present of a large-sized bottle of Red Horse whiskey from a consulate. The bottle had remained locked in my closet for 2 years. Then, I presented it to a friend of mine, accustomed to drinks, and had a sip or two to feel how it tasted. I had not felt anything special about it. Some have told me that they take alcohol for its kick, but the irony is that they forget that a much stronger kick to throw them out of the field could be in wait for them. Smoking changes over decades. As for the popular fad of the older days, viz., smoking, it is heartening to note that it has lost its craze amongst the current younger generation, though a host of young women, unfortunately, have got used to it at the same time. In our younger days, we often came across ropes with their free end burning, tied to posts near almost every Panbiri shop in Calcutta. These one-end burning ropes were meant for lighting cigarettes or biras. Nowadays, these are hardly seen, signifying a marked decline in the smoking population. A good many of my smoker friends in their younger days tried to give up the habit of smoking many a time, only to resume it sooner than later. I took to smoking after I had entered my service career and had continued it for several years. I gave it up forever at a single stroke when my 4-year-old child objected to my smoking and wanted me to give it up. I don't find such strength of mind in the next generation. In my assessment, greed and attachment have got the better of us. Smoking, which was prevalent among women of lower classes in earlier days, now seems to have caught the imagination of educated women. I was surprised to come across some young, educated girls of well-to-do families smoking nonchalantly on open roads in broad daylight. Globalization and its effects. Globalization and easy money are also creating impediments to the proper growth of the future generation. Today, children are often left in the care of domestic help or daycare centers due to both the parents being employed or otherwise engaged for long hours. These children are mostly deprived of the loving company and care of parents, more particularly, of the mother for a major part of the day. The child's woe is further heightened if the parents have a party-going habit. Often, the deficiency in giving time is sought to be made up by gifts of costly toys. Being unable to spend a playful time with the mother or the father, such children may develop behavioral problems. Getting too many gifts at ease may make them lose their urge to get things with effort. This could adversely affect their studies and stand in the way of their success in life. Further, being brought up in affluence, these children may take life easy and may not feel the need to be up and doing to stand on their feet. The scene of a colorful life before them may blur their vision, and they may live with a false sense that this would never end in their life. There is nothing wrong with being brought up in affluence if proper care is exercised. The child should not be pampered and should be made aware of the real-world situation. A child is like a sensitive instrument that could give the best performance only by careful handling. Poverty, its impact. I was brought up in poverty. Our prevailing conditions and the need to get out of them were always behind my mind. That gave me the impetus to work hard to come out of a life of wants. Poverty is, however, a curse. To my mind, it affects one's mental development in two different ways. On the softer side, it often makes one timid and hinders personality development, good guy. On the harder side, it may make one cruel with a criminal bent of mind to forcibly snatch things not within one's reach, bad guy. Electronic devices and their effects, a postscript. A new menace to the welfare of children has come in the form of mobile phones. Many parents often hand over mobile phones to their young children to keep themselves free at home for their day-to-day activities. The children get absorbed in playing electronic games, chatting, talking with friends, or enjoying other internet programs of their choice, making themselves open to high-risk radiation. In an article on the website momjunction.com, it has been reported amongst other ill effects of mobile phones on children, including changes of their behavioral patterns and moods, as follows, quote, "Who has classified cell phone radiation as possibly carcinogenic to humans? Children absorb more than 60% of the radiation. Their brains' thinner skin, tissues, and bones allow them to absorb radiation twice that of the grown ups. Their developing nervous system makes them more vulnerable to this carcinogenic," unquote. It is of utmost importance for the parents and others concerned to be alive to this danger and adopt measures to prevent their kids from falling prey to it. Unfortunately, I could not bring it home even to my family members. Again, due to easy accessibility to electronic devices, the inclination of children towards reading storybooks, which would enhance their imaginative power and value sense, is on the decline. While everything happens before the eyes, it leaves nothing to imagine. Further, we easily get attracted to audiovisual presentations. Easy access to the internet brings another danger to children in their formative stage. They may get exposed to harmful activities like violence and immoral traffic. Views on alcoholism, a postscript. During the first month and a half of the lockdown period, to break the chain of the spread of coronavirus, all shops and establishments among others, including wine shops, remained closed, by orders under the provisions of the Epidemic Control Act, 1897. Later, when relaxations to the opening of some kinds of shops, including the wine shops, were given, queues of buyers of alcohol extending to kilometers were seen in front of the wine shops in the cities and elsewhere in India. Hours before the shops opened, buyers started forming the queues and stood there for long hours just to have the bottles of drinks to quench their thirst. There were squabbles at many places for overtaking one another to acquire the precious bottle, and at times it even required intervention by the police to maintain the order. This was despite a hike of 70% on the duties and taxes on these items. It was, as if, the be-all and end-all for these people to acquire a bottle of alcohol. They cared a little for virus infection. This is how the Indian society today has degraded itself by its westernist permissiveness. Story behind settlement in Kolkata. Introduction. As I have stated earlier, my father could not acquire any house of his own after we had migrated from the erstwhile East Pakistan, where we had an ancestral home. We did not, therefore, have any home or house anywhere in post-partition India. While serving in the districts of West Bengal, I could not also manage to acquire any house or homestead for my family till I came to Calcutta on transfer. In fact, I did not feel an urge for my own house till then, despite my wife's pestering. I had served in the districts for the first half of my service career. I did not consider it worth having a house of our own in any of those districts. Salt Lake plot, applied for and refused in 1984. When I was posted in Calcutta in the early 1980s, I learned of a scheme under which residential plots were distributed in Salt Lake by the state government. I applied for a plot of land in Salt Lake to the Urban Development Department, which controlled the distribution of these plots, on January 2, 1984. I received a printed postcard reply to my said application from the Urban Development Department years later, informing me that there was no plot available in Salt Lake. I was aware that a large number of plots of land were distributed to different categories of people, including the politicians and the bureaucrats. During all those years my application had been lying in that department. The assistant secretary, who had replied to my application, and who had been a batchmate of mine in the university too, could also find a plot for himself during the same period. Many of my colleagues, having connections at the right places or using influential persons to plead for them, too, had managed to get plots in Salt Lake around the time I applied for and during later years. Salt Lake plot allotment power goes to CM. Residential plots at Salt Lake were distributed by the party in power in the 1980s and 1990s as the largest to their party followers and the bureaucrats and others towing their lines or somehow connected to them. The allotments were made purely on political consideration or on consideration of connection with those that mattered. I did not have any linkage, political or otherwise, nor was I eager to develop any at the cost of my individuality. For it was a known thing that to get something you must give some other thing in return, maybe your loyalty. Lack of transparency in the distribution of plots of discretionary quota finally invited a public interest litigation, PIL. Deciding on the PIL, the High Court cancelled the last lot of allotment of plots. The court also took away the powers of allotment of plots from the department and ordered that the allotments, thenceforth, could only be made by the chief minister. But this was not a remedy by itself, it only shifted the power center to the political office of the chief minister. Efforts for a plot in Salt Lake via the Governor CM channel failed. Much later, during my tenure in Raj Bhawan, the governor, at my request, had talked to the chief minister for allotment of a plot of land to me at Salt Lake. The governor Professor S. Nurul Hassan had told me later that the chief minister had indicated that a plot for cooperative housing could be made available. Accordingly, I had formally applied for a plot as the promoter of a prospective cooperative society and had personally carried the application to CM's office, along with a handwritten personal note of the governor, to the CM. Subsequently, I followed it up with the official of the CM's political office, who used to deal with the matter but to no avail. Ultimately, I had to give up. At that time, I had come to know that even in cooperative plots, some politically or otherwise favored persons were often pushed in replacing some in the group that initially promoted the society. The official dealing with the matter in the political office of the CM possibly had genuine doubts about my agreeing to replace any of those named in my application as prospective members with persons of political choice. That was perhaps why my application, even after carrying a personal note from the governor to the CM, did not find favor and finally died a silent death. Discrimination on political consideration. Incidentally, on an earlier occasion, one of my predecessors in office at Raj Bhawan had managed to obtain an individual plot of land following the same Governor-Chief Minister channel. Said colleague of mine could have a plot despite owning a flat elsewhere in Calcutta, even though the eligibility criteria did not permit allotment of land in Salt Lake to anyone having land or a house in Calcutta metropolitan area. I did not have any land or house anywhere in India, and yet, my application died a silent death in the political office of the CM. This instance vis-a-vis mine should be enough to make one understand the consideration on which such matters were disposed of at that time. Allotment of a plot of land by lottery in Parui, Bihala. However, on the other side of the story, I had applied for homestead land in Muzaffarpur, PS Bihala, in response to an advertisement by the Housing Department. I made the application on April 26, 1985. I was allotted a plot of land on October 30, 1985, by lottery amongst the applicants. I paid the cost of the land, amounting to 24,367 Indian rupees, taking a house building loan from the government. I was handed over the possession of the land on February 5, 1993. I then applied to Calcutta Corporation for the mutation of that land. Joint Cooperative Housing Society formed by friends in Salt Lake. Meanwhile, my friend Bala One and others had formed a cooperative society under the name and style of Prangan Cooperative Housing Society Ltd and had obtained a plot of land for a residential building at Salt Lake. He, Bala, had to do much persuasion for getting this plot of land, even though he was posted in the Urban Development Department, which controlled the matter at that time. One of the members, a colleague of ours, was unwilling to continue as a member of the said society. Bala and my other friend Asok Chatterjee in the cooperative offered me that membership. Initially, I was reluctant as I had already taken a loan for Parui land and couldn't have a second loan for Salt Lake. I did not also have the means to do without a loan. Besides, I preferred a house to a flat. But Bala and one of our senior colleagues, whose son was also a member of this society, assured me that they would see that my problem regarding the availability of a house building loan for the Salt Lake flat was resolved. At the insistence of Bala and also of my wife, I finally agreed. I was admitted as a member of Prangan Cooperative Housing Society Limited on January 17, 1992. Our senior colleague, Ashok Bhattacharjee, and my friend Bala had persuaded the finance department to sanction a second house building loan and thereby helped me a lot to resolve my problem. Second government loan. As stated, at the instance of my colleague's finance department had agreed to sanction me the second loan, subject to certain conditions. As the finance department had required, I first returned the Parui land to the housing department. This was on August 30, 1993. Finance Department's direction was in consonance with the government policy that one having a plot or a flat in the Calcutta metropolitan area would not be eligible for a residential flat or plot in Salt Lake. After surrendering the Parui land, I applied for a fresh house building loan, attaching the housing department's certificate of return of the Parui land. A loan was then sanctioned to me for the Salt Lake flat, after the deduction of the amount advanced earlier, for the Parui land. Later, I got a refund of the cost of the land I had paid to the housing department for the Parui land. Personal loan and cut down in expenditure. The government loan was, by itself, not sufficient to enable me to complete the construction work of my flat. One of my colleague-cum-friends, Alok Basu, came to my help. When he learned of my predicament, he, without my asking for it, offered a personal loan of 10,000 rupees, which I gratefully accepted. I had another personal loan of 2,000 rupees from my elder brother. Even after all these, I had fallen short of funds for having all the windows of the flat to be made in wood. I cut down the expenditure, on this account, by opting for steel windows in all the rooms except the roadside two, which needed to be in wood to maintain an aesthetic front view of the building. Both the personal loans as also the government loans were repaid in due course. Completion and possession of flat. Construction of the building under Prangan Cooperative Society was completed in Plot No. BB 29 in 1995 and the flats were allotted by lottery. I now hold a flat in this building. We have been living here since June 1, 1997. I feel it was a better choice when compared to Parui land. I must thank Bala and my wife for forcing upon me the decision to join this cooperative. I am grateful to my friend Alok for his timely help, but for which it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to complete the construction of the flat in time. This is how I came to own a residential flat for settlement in Kolkata. My story of life ends here. I had to cut down some aspects of my life for want of time and space. This is otherwise complete. Thanks for giving your time to watch.